In the wake of the great upheavals of passion and the intricate, often tumultuous weaving of the golden Aphrodite, there descends upon the high peaks of Olympus a profound and necessary stillness. We have spoken of the fires of desire that consume the hearts of gods and mortals alike, those restless flames that drive the hero to his quest and the goddess to her longing. Yet, before the hearths of the world were lit by the sparks of artifice or the warmth of the sun, there existed a flame of a different nature, a light that does not flicker with the winds of change nor gutter in the storms of the soul. This is the light of Hestia, the eldest of the generation of the Olympians, she who was first to be consumed by the darkness of the Titan and last to be restored to the light of the living world. To understand the order of the cosmos as it was established in the age of Zeus, one must look not to the thunderbolt or the trident, but to the center, to the point of absolute rest around which the entire celestial machinery revolves. For as the chronicler Apollodorus records in the lineage of the gods, Hestia was the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, the first fruit of that ancient and terrible union that sought to devour its own legacy. She was the first to feel the crushing weight of her father's fear, the first to inhabit the sunless void of his belly. And when at last the cunning of Zeus and the drought of Metis forced the Titan to yield his prize, she was the last to emerge, making her both the eldest and the youngest of her divine siblings. This paradox of time and birth marks her as the goddess of the beginning and the end, the one who stands at the threshold of all things. In the great halls of the immortals, where the air is thick with the scent of ambrosia and the echoes of divine laughter, Hestia moves with a grace that is silent and unobserved, for her power is not found in the clamor of the assembly, but in the preservation of the sacred center. While her brothers and sisters traverse the wide earth and the depths of the sea to carve out their dominions, Hestia remained. She is the anchor of the divine family, the steward of the eternal flame that burns in the palace of Zeus, and it is through her that the gods find their unity. Yet, though she is the embodiment of peace and the guardian of the home, her path was not without its trials of the heart. In the days following the establishment of the new order, when the scars of the Titanomachy were still fading from the face of the earth, the beauty of the eldest daughter of Rhea did not go unnoticed by those who sought a consort of equal dignity. It is said in the ancient hymns, specifically those songs dedicated to the foam-born Aphrodite, that even the Queen of Desires herself had no power over the mind of Hestia. Aphrodite, who can bend the will of the mightiest gods and lead the wild beasts of the mountains in a dance of longing, found in Hestia a soul that was impenetrable. The daughter of Cronus was unmoved by the honeyed words of the goddess of love, for her heart was set upon a different purpose, one that transcended the cycles of birth and decay. It was during this time of emerging stability that two of the most powerful lords of Olympus turned their gaze toward the goddess of the hearth. First came Poseidon, the earth-shaker, the lord of the salt spray and the deep trenches of the ocean. He rose from his crystalline palace beneath the waves, his presence heralded by the crashing of the tide and the trembling of the shore. He brought with him the majesty of the sea, the promise of vast horizons, and the untamed power of the abyss. He sought to claim Hestia as his bride, to bring the stillness of the hearth into the restless motion of his watery kingdom. Following him was Apollo, the bright lord of the bow and the lyre, he who sees all things beneath the sun and whose music harmonizes the spheres. Apollo brought the brilliance of the day and the clarity of prophecy, seeking to join his radiant light with the steady internal glow of Hestia's flame. Here were two pillars of the Olympian order, the sea and the sun, both vying for the hand of the eldest sister. The tension on Olympus was palpable, for the union of Hestia with either would have shifted the balance of power in ways that even the Moirai might have found difficult to weave. But Hestia, whose wisdom is the wisdom of the foundation, saw that her role was not to be the consort of one, but the protector of all. She understood that if she were to belong to a single god, the center of the world would be pulled from its moorings. She chose instead a path that had never before been trodden by the eldest of the gods. In a moment that silenced the halls of Olympus and caused the very stars to pause in their courses, Hestia approached the throne of her brother, Zeus. She did not come with petitions for land or for the governance of tribes, nor did she seek the adornments of jewelry or the tributes of war. Instead, she performed an act of supreme devotion. She reached out and touched the head of the king of the gods, placing her hand upon the brow that holds the lightning and the thoughts of the world in the presence of the assembled immortals. Hestia swore a great and inviolate oath. She swore by the life of Zeus and by the eternal order of the cosmos that she would remain a virgin forever, that no god or mortal would ever share her bed, and that her body would remain as pure and unyielding as the flame she tended. This was not a rejection of life, but an affirmation of a higher service by remaining a virgin. Hestia ensured that she would never be subject to the rivalries of marriage or the distractions of offspring. She became the mother of the community rather than the mother of a lineage. Zeus, recognizing the profound necessity of her choice and the weight of the sacrifice she offered for the sake of divine harmony, granted her a reward that far surpassed any earthly dowry. He decreed that Hestia would hold the place of honor in the center of the house. He gave unto her the first and most precious portions of every sacrifice offered by the hands of men. In every temple of every god, before the smoke of the offering rises to the Lord of the sanctuary, it is Hestia who receives the first libation. She is the first and last, the one who opens the door to the divine and the one who closes it when the ritual is complete. In the cities of men, this honor took the form of the Prytaneum, the common hearth of the people, where a fire was kept burning day and night, never permitted to die. If the fire of Hestia were ever extinguished, it was as if the soul of the city had departed, and only through the most sacred of rites could it be rekindled from the pure rays of the sun. This eternal flame became the symbol of the continuity of the human race and the enduring presence of the gods among them. Hestia's influence extended from the public square into the most private corners of the home. The hearth was the omphalos of the household, the sacred circle where the family gathered for warmth, for sustenance, and for the sharing of stories. It was at the hearth that the newborn child was carried in a ritual dance, being introduced to the spirit of the ancestors and the protection of the goddess. It was at the hearth that the stranger, fleeing from his enemies or seeking the laws of hospitality, would find sanctuary. To touch the hearth of a man was to place oneself under the protection of Hestia, and to harm a guest who sat by that fire was to invite the wrath of Zeus Xenios and the silent, cold judgment of the goddess of the flame. Though she has fewer myths of adventure than the silver-footed Thetis or the gray-eyed Athena, Hestia's presence is the most pervasive of all. She is the silence between the words of the poet, the foundation upon which the walls of the city are built, and the stability that allows the other gods to exercise their functions. Without Hestia, the travels of Hermes would have no destination. Without Hestia, the wars of Ares would have no home to return to. Without Hestia, the wisdom of Zeus would have no vessel in which to reside. In the Roman tradition, she is called Vesta, and her importance only grew as the small village on the Tiber transformed into the mistress of the world. The Vestal virgins, the chosen priestesses of the city, became the living embodiments of the goddess's vow, tending the sacred fire of Rome with a devotion that was tied to the very survival of the state. They were the only ones permitted to touch the sacred objects hidden in the inner sanctum, things that were said to have been brought from the ruins of Troy by Aeneas himself. As long as the fire of Vesta burned, Rome was eternal. Thus, the myth of Hestia is the myth of the center. In the chronological unfolding of the divine history, she represents the point where the primordial chaos of the Titans finally settles into the ordered architecture of the Olympian age. She is the eldest child of the dark past and the youngest light of the bright future. When we look upon the embers of a dying fire or the steady glow of a candle in the window, we are seeing the shadow of that ancient goddess who refused the sea and the sun to become the soul of the world. She reminds us that while the affairs of Aphrodite may move the world to passion and the thunder of Zeus may move it to awe, it is the quiet, unchanging flame of Hestia that makes the world a place where life can endure. She is the guardian of the essence, the keeper of the spark that distinguishes the civilized world from the howling wilderness beyond the gate. In the narrative of the gods, her story is the foundation, the bedrock upon which all subsequent legends are inscribed. Even as the Olympians involved themselves in the complicated lives of heroes and the fates of empires, Hestia remained in the hall of Zeus, her eyes fixed upon the flame, her hands folded in a gesture of eternal peace. She is the first to be honored in the songs of the poets and the last to be remembered when the lights of the world grow dim. For in the end, when all the wars are fought and all the lovers are parted, there is only the hearth and the goddess who waits there to welcome the weary traveler home. In the Roman era, when the flame of Vesta became the focus of a state cult that lasted for over 1,000 years, the essence of the goddess remained the same. She was the purity that allowed the empire to function, the moral center that the Romans believed was the source of their strength. The extinction of her fire by the Emperor Theodosius in the waning days of the ancient world was seen by many as the final signal that the old world had truly passed away. In our journey through the myths of the Greeks and Romans, we find that Hestia is the one who allows us to tell the story, for she is the ground upon which the story is told. She is the mother of all narratives, for every story begins at the hearth and returns to it when the day is done. The affairs of Aphrodite, the travels of Hermes, the labors of Heracles, all these are but sparks that fly from the central fire of Hestia, shining brightly for a moment before returning to the warmth from which they came. Let us then remember the eldest daughter of Rhea with the honor she is due, the one who stands at the beginning and the end, the first and the last, the keeper of the eternal flame. Her silence is not an absence, but a presence so vast that it fills the world. She is Hestia, the inviolate, the guardian of the sacred fire, and the soul of the Olympian house. Through her, the gods are made near to us, and through her, we find our way back to the gods. As the sun sets on the age of the heroes, and the stars begin to emerge in the velvet sky. In the next chapter of our history, we shall see how this order was tested by the pride of kings and the whims of fortune. But for now, we rest in the shadow of the goddess, knowing that the fire is tended and the center holds. This is the legacy of the eldest Olympian, the goddess who stayed when all others fled, the one who remained true to her vow and in doing so saved the world from the cold. Her story is the story of the flame that never fails, the light that is never quenched, and the love that seeks no reward other than the preservation of the sacred. Let the libations be poured, let the first fruits be offered, and let the name of Hestia be praised in the halls of the gods and the houses of men. For she is the foundation, the hearth, and the home.